They brought him to Outpost 17 near Las Cruces, New Mexico. On a Tuesday morning no one remembered. No tags. No name. Just a cage. Big enough to fit him. Small enough to make him feel stuck. The file said male. German Shepherd. Age unknown. Level 3 aggression. That was all. No one asked where he came from. Nobody cared. 2 bites. One handler sent home with 32 stitches. They said he wasn't worth saving. Just another canine that snapped. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just stared through people like he was already gone. Some called him wild. Some called him dangerous. But when Corporal Jenna Bell sat in front of his cage that first morning, she didn't call him anything at all. Let me take you back to where it all began. Jenna Bell was from Kentucky, 28. Short, quiet, and not the type people noticed when she walked into a room. That was fine by her. She didn't like being seen. Not since her last tour in Kandahar. She had a limp now. Not big. Just enough to feel every time the weather changed. She arrived at the base 2 weeks before the dog did. Assigned to the med tent. Her uniform was always clean but old. Her boots had red dust crusted into the soles. And she kept a photo in her chest pocket that nobody ever saw. They kept the cage near the far side of the yard. Away from the training runs. Past the old burn zone. Where no one went unless they had to. The cage door was bent at the bottom like someone had tried to kick it in. Or out. 1 water bowl. 1 sign taped to the gate in fading red marker. Do not approach. Euthanize Friday. A few soldiers had made jokes. Go pet him, see if you make it back. But most stayed away. Not because they were scared of him. Because they didn't want to be seen caring. That morning Jenna walked out alone. No leash. No clipboard. No command. Just her. She stood in front of the cage. Quiet. Watched him for a minute. Then sat on the ground. No stool. No gear. Just dirt under her and a photograph in her lap. The dog didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't blink. His chest rose and fell fast like he'd been running. Even though he hadn't moved an inch. His eyes didn't look at her. They looked past her. Like he didn't believe she was real. She didn't speak. Not that day. Not the next either. But she kept coming. Jenna didn't look like anyone special. She never tried to. Most people didn't know her first name. They just called her Doc Bell or Corporal. That was fine by her. Less talking meant less lying. She'd been on 3 tours. The last one broke something in her. Not in her body that had mostly healed. It was something quieter. Something deeper. She used to talk to dogs. She used to trust them more than people. But that stopped when Milo died. She never told anyone about Milo. They knew he was her K9 partner, sure. They saw the photo once when it fell out of her locker. But no one asked and she never explained. All they knew was that she didn't smile at dogs anymore. Until now. By the 4th morning, word had spread. The medic was sitting with the level 3 dog every day. For hours not doing anything. No commands. No muzzle. No handler supervision. Just silence. 2 mechanics passed by on their way to refuel the Humvee and slowed down when they saw her again. She's back? One of them asked. Every damn day, the other said. I heard she hasn't even tried to feed him. She's not feeding him? A third voice said behind them. Sergeant Mendoza, arms crossed, standing back near the fence. She's doing something else. They all watched in silence. Jenna sat in the dirt. Her knees pulled up, arms resting on them, same posture every morning. The dog hadn't lunged in days, hadn't barked either. He just watched her now, tense but not angry, alert but not aggressive. Mendoza stepped forward a little. Hey, he said, not yelling, just loud enough for her to hear. What are you hoping to get out of this, Corporal? She didn't answer right away. Then she looked down at the picture in her lap and said, I'm not trying to get anything. He tilted his head, waiting. I just don't think he should die scared. That was all she said. Mendoza didn't argue. He turned around and left. That afternoon, someone taped a new notice on the dog's cage. The red marker was thicker this time. Euthanasia Friday, final order. That night, Jenna couldn't sleep. She kept replaying it in her head. The way his ears twitched every time her voice dropped. The way his body stayed rigid, even when he was too tired to move. She thought about that moment in Kandahar. The last time she saw Milo. How he pulled her out from under a collapsed roof and stayed with her until help came. How they told her 2 weeks later that he'd been put down. She never got to say goodbye. They buried him without her. She missed the ceremony. Missed everything. And now this dog, this ghost with a heartbeat, was going to die alone too. The next morning something was different. He was closer to the bars. Not much. Just a foot. But it was the first time he moved toward her. She didn't show it on her face, but her heart jumped. She pulled the photo out again and laid it on the ground between them. "He used to sit just like you," she said softly. The dog didn't blink. "I never got to save him," she whispered. Then she stood up and left. She didn't want to rush it. She knew trust was slow. The weather changed that night. A dust storm came through fast and hard. It ripped tarps, knocked down water barrels, and sent tools flying across the yard. By morning, half the tents were coated in red sand. Jenna checked the med bay, cleaned her corner, and ran to the cage. He was curled in the back corner, shaking again. The tarp was gone. The metal bowl had flipped and rolled to the fence. The sign was half torn, and the dog looked like he'd shrunk in size overnight. Jenna dropped to her knees and crawled under the fence line to sit next to the bars. She didn't care about the mud or the ripped pants. She just sat there, closer this time, and whispered, "You're safe." That was the first time he made a sound. Not a growl, not a whine, just something like a heavy sigh. She leaned her back against the cage wall and slowly slid down until her shoulder touched the metal. He didn't move away. That was all she needed. Thursday came. 1 day left. The staff started making quiet plans. "Who's doing the final injection?" someone asked. "Not me," the vet tech said. "That dog's different." "They're all different," someone else muttered. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. To Jenna. That morning she brought a blanket. Not to use, just to sit on. She was tired of getting up with rocks in her knees. When she unfolded it, the dog tilted his head. She smiled. "You're starting to remember what softness feels like, huh?" she said. He shifted again. Closer. Her hand inched forward in the dirt. Slow. Careful. Palms up. He sniffed. Then, like a whisper, his nose touched her fingers. She closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing else existed. That night, she stayed later than usual. He didn't want her to leave. She could see it. He kept standing up when she moved. Not barking. Not growling. Just standing. Like he didn't know how to ask her to stay. So she did. She stayed. Until the sky turned dark and her stomach growled. "Tomorrow," she said. "I'll come early. I promise." She stood. His eyes followed her the whole way. But she didn't make it back the next morning. An explosion at the test range caused a fire. One of the crew got caught under equipment. She spent the night helping pull him out. Her hands were scraped raw. Her back ached. She washed up, grabbed her jacket, and started running toward the cage. That's when she heard it. "Dog's gone." Someone shouted it across the yard. "The cage is open." She didn't wait for clearance. She didn't ask questions. She ran. Fast. Faster than she should have with her knee. The cage was empty. No blood. No sound. Just one thing left behind. Her photo. Still folded. Still dry. Lying exactly where she left it. Jenna stared at the empty cage like her body forgot how to breathe. Her hands were still cut from the rescue shift. Her knees were stiff. But none of it mattered now. The cage was open. Not forced. Not broken. Just open. And he was gone. She looked down. The photo was still there. Folded. Clean. Not even dusty. She reached for it with a shaking hand, pressed it into her pocket, and stood. "Who let him out?" she asked quietly, voice low. A tech from the kennels shook his head. "Nobody touched it." "Was it locked?" "I think so. I mean, it should have been. The gate was still clipped this morning. I swear." Jenna didn't speak. She didn't yell. She just turned and walked. Sergeant Mendoza saw her moving fast across the yard and stepped into her path. "Where are you going?" "North fence," she said, already brushing past him. "We'll send a team." "No," she said without looking back. "You'll scare him." "Corporal, this isn't protocol." She stopped walking, then turned around slowly, looked him in the eye, and said, "You're right, but he doesn't need protocol. He needs someone who didn't give up on him." Then she kept going. The fence line was low near the north edge, rusted out from years of wind and flash floods. The brush beyond it stretched into old fireground, land burned 5 years ago and never cleared. It was filled with twisted metal, engine scraps, collapsed fencing. No one went there, not even the coyotes. She pulled the fence back far enough to slip through and kept walking. She wasn't guessing. She just knew. The way someone knows when a memory calls them back. Footprints in the dirt showed up not far in. Deep, heavy, and one of them had blood. Her pace slowed, not because she was scared, but because she didn't want to frighten him if he was close. She passed an old tire half buried in red sand, then a twisted fence post, then a stretch of burnt weeds that crackled under her boots. Then she saw it. A smear of blood across a fallen pipe. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't dry either. She moved closer, crouched low, and whispered, "Please be okay." Behind the pipe, under a sheet of warped aluminum, she saw him. He was curled into a tight ball, chest moving fast, one leg stretched wrong like it was caught. His eyes were wide open but unfocused, and his side was bleeding. He didn't growl. He didn't move. He just stared at her like he couldn't tell if she was real. She didn't go to him yet. She knelt in the dirt 5 feet away and placed her hands flat on the ground. "I told you I'd come back," she said gently. No sound from him, just blinking, slow, long. "You remember that picture I showed you?" she asked, pulling it from her pocket. "That was Milo. He didn't leave me, not even when everything fell." The dog's eyes followed the photo. His head shifted slightly, just a tilt. "But enough. I know it hurts," she said. "But you came here for a reason. You knew I'd find you." She inched closer. No jump, no flinch. He was too weak to run, but not too far gone to trust. That was the difference. She laid the photo down near his paw. Then she whispered, "Let me help you." Very slowly, she pulled the corner of the aluminum sheet off his leg. He whimpered once, quiet, but didn't pull away. She saw the gash, deep, caught on rusted metal. It would need stitching. Her fingers moved carefully, pulling a roll of gauze from her jacket. No antiseptic, no scissors, just whatever she had in her field kit. She wrapped him fast but gentle. Every time he winced, she paused. "Almost done," she said. "Just hold on." When she finally tied the last piece, her hands were shaking. She sat back on her knees and looked at him. "I can't carry you," she said. "Not all the way, but I'm not leaving without you." His eyes met hers. Then, slowly, with effort, he pushed himself up. Not all the way, but enough to stand wobbly, legs stiff. "You stubborn thing," she whispered. He limped toward her. She placed a hand against his neck, not to control, but to guide. He leaned into it. They started walking, step by step. No leash, no rope, just quiet trust. Took an hour to get back. Every few steps he stopped. Every few steps she waited. By the time they reached the fence line, she was crying and didn't know it. She pushed the gap wide and guided him through. Soldiers nearby froze when they saw them. The dog, covered in dust and blood. The medic, face streaked with sweat and mud. One private stepped forward and opened his mouth like he was about to ask something. But Mendoza raised a hand and stopped him. Jenna walked straight toward the medical tent. "I need supplies," she told the nurse inside. The nurse blinked. "Is that the—" "Yes." "You brought him back?" "No," Jenna said softly, laying her hand on his head. "He came back to me. They cleaned him up, stitched him. He didn't fight, didn't even growl when they shaved around the wound. He just kept his eyes on her the whole time. She didn't leave his side, not even when they said it was against policy." Mendoza didn't argue. Not this time. When the sun started to set, she pulled a folded towel from the supply shelf and laid it on the floor beside him. Then she sat, crossed her legs, leant back against the wall. He curled up slowly, leaned into her side, and closed his eyes. That was the first time he slept peacefully since he arrived. The next morning, a new notice was posted on the cage. Name Chance. Status: transferred. Not for termination. Handler: C. J. Bell. She didn't smile, but she did cry when no one was looking. He wasn't hers. But he was no longer a problem. He was no longer forgotten. He was Chance. And he was still here. A letter arrived for her that evening. No name, no return address, just a short, simple line typed on paper. If you could save one, maybe you can teach the rest of us how. They moved him to a corner of the med tent that no one used. It was just a storage space really, with one cot, an old fan, and boxes stacked against the wall. Jenna cleared it out with her own hands, laid down a folded blanket, brought in a bowl, not metal, plastic, so it wouldn't echo when he moved it. Chance hadn't barked since he came back. Not once. He still startled at loud boots or sudden voices, but he didn't shake anymore. He watched everything, especially her. At night, she stayed near him, not always on the cot. Sometimes she sat on the floor beside him with her back against the wall, just breathing, just present. Sometimes they both fell asleep like that. Someone snapped a photo one night. Neither of them noticed. In the picture, her hand rests on his back, and his head leans against her knee. No one joked about the wild dog anymore. Sergeant Mendoza started dropping by. Not often, but enough to be noticed. He'd stand just outside the flap of the tent, arms crossed, watching through the opening. One morning he finally stepped in. "You're still sleeping in here?" he asked. Jenna didn't look up. She was brushing Chance slowly, fingers moving carefully around his neck. "Not every night," she said. He waited, then added, "You know he's not cleared for reuse." "I know. So what's the plan?" She paused, brushing stopping for a second. Then she looked up and said, "He doesn't need to be used. He needs to be understood." Mendoza didn't reply. He just looked at the dog, calm, head resting on his front paws, and nodded once before leaving. Later that week, the psychologist on base asked to speak with her. His name was Dr. Levin. Soft-spoken, wore glasses that never stayed on straight. He met her outside the supply shed. "I've been asked to evaluate the situation," he said. Jenna leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You mean Chance?" "I mean the whole picture," he said gently. "Your connection to him, his past, your past." She didn't respond right away. He continued, "You're not in trouble. I just think this might be bigger than one dog." She looked down at her boots, then asked, "Have you ever been pulled out of rubble by something with fur?" He blinked. "No." She pushed off the wall. "Then it's probably hard to explain." By the end of the month, Chance followed her everywhere. He limped less now. He walked taller. He even started wagging his tail. Not all the time, but sometimes. Enough to make people stop mid-sentence. The first time someone reached out to pet him, he flinched. The second time, he didn't. Jenna was there both times. One night, Mendoza brought it up again. They stood outside the mess tent, watching the yard. "He trusts you more than anyone," he said. "I trust him back." He folded his arms. "What if this isn't about just you and him?" She turned toward him. "You thinking program?" He nodded. "Not training," she said quickly. "No commands, no control, just healing. You'd lead it. I'd live it." He smiled. "Then write it up. Let's pitch it." It didn't take much. A name, purpose, a trial plan. They called it Second Paw. A program for dogs who served and broke. For handlers who came home without them. For anyone carrying something too heavy to explain. They didn't make a big announcement. They just made room. Room for one more cot. One more bowl. One more heart ready to unlearn fear. Jenna opened the pilot program with Chance at her side. First guest was a retired handler named Brooks. He lost his K9 in a fire, a mission gone sideways in Yemen. Brooks hadn't touched a dog in 4 years. He sat on the bench across from Chance, arms stiff, hands clenched. Jenna placed the photo of Milo on the table. "This was mine," she said. "I never got to say goodbye." Brooks looked down at it, swallowed hard and said, "Neither did I." Chance walked over on his own. No command, no leash. He sat at Brooks's feet. Brooks started crying. That night, Jenna stayed late. Chance curled beside her cot. She pulled the old photo out again and held it between her hands. "Milo," she whispered. "He's helping me say goodbye to you." Chance opened one eye. She smiled. "You did good today," she said, laying the photo beside him. "You were never the problem." He let out a long breath and went back to sleep. But the past isn't finished yet. And not everyone on base believes this dog deserves to stay. In the next chapter, someone from Chance's original unit shows up, and they want him gone. They claim he was involved in something too dark to be fixed. But Jenna has already made up her mind. She's not giving him up again. It was supposed to be a normal morning. Jenna was filling Chance's water bowl when someone called her name from behind. "Corporal Bell?" She turned, wiping her hands on her pants. A tall man in desert camo stood just inside the gate. He wore no name tag. His uniform looked new, boots too clean. His face was sharp, eyes hard. He held a clipboard in one hand and a folder in the other. "Who are you?" she asked. "Lieutenant Morgan," he said. "Internal Affairs, K9 Division." Jenna didn't move. "Why are you here?" He looked past her, toward the far end of the tent, where Chance lay watching from the shade. "I'm here for the dog." She stepped forward, blocking his view. "He has a name." Morgan didn't flinch. Not anymore. The meeting was held in the admin office that afternoon. Jenna sat across from Morgan and 2 others. Mendoza was there too, standing behind her with arms crossed, not saying a word. Morgan placed the folder on the table and opened it. "This K9, he said, tapping the page, "was once part of Operation Widow's Gate. Do you know what that is?" "No," Jenna said flatly. "You weren't supposed to," he replied. "It was off books. A joint mission involving recon, explosives, and civilian asset control in hostile territory. The dog, then named Axel, was deployed with Handler First Class R. Kane." He paused for effect. "That handler is no longer alive." Jenna leaned in. "What are you trying to say?" "He didn't die in combat," Morgan continued. "He bled out after being attacked. By the dog." Jenna stared at him. "He turned," she said. Morgan nodded. "Yes." Mendoza shifted behind her. "And what does that have to do with this base?" "The dog went missing after Kane's death. Found weeks later, abandoned and feral. He was recovered, evaluated, flagged as unstable and sent to be put down. Somehow he ended up here." Jenna's hands clenched in her lap. Morgan pushed a piece of paper across the table. "We're here to finish what should have been done a year ago." She didn't touch the paper. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "Witness statements," he said. "Damage reports, medical logs. And we have his microchip scan confirming his identity." "And did anyone ask why it happened?" she said. Morgan paused. "What? Why he turned," she said again. "Why a dog trained to protect suddenly snapped." Morgan's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter why. It matters what he did." Jenna stood up. "It matters to me." That evening she didn't sleep. She sat beside Chance for hours, stroking behind his ear, watching him breathe. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Did you hurt him?" Chance didn't move. He just kept breathing slow and steady. "You've never hurt me," she said. "Not once." He lifted his head slightly, eyes on her. She nodded. "I don't care what they say. I know who you are now." The next day, she requested access to the archived K9 files. Took 4 hours and 3 phone calls, but she got them. She read everything. Kane's incident report, the photos, the notes, and something stood out. Multiple prior complaints filed against Handler Kane by other staff. use of excessive force, unauthorized punishments, ignored warnings. One note mentioned the dog refusing to enter Kane's truck more than once. Another said he hid under benches when Kane entered the room. No action was ever taken. And then Kane died, and the dog was blamed. She printed the documents and brought them straight to Mendoza. This wasn't an attack, she said. This was survival. Mendoza read through the pages slowly, eyes narrowing with each one. He finally looked up. This changes everything. She nodded. I want this dog cleared. Not just for me. For every K9 that's been blamed for what we didn't stop. That afternoon, Mendoza handed the folder to Morgan in front of the entire admin staff. I'm reopening the file, he said. Morgan tried to push back. This doesn't change the outcome. It changes the story, Mendoza said. And that's enough. Morgan didn't smile. He just gathered his things and left. Days passed. Then a week. Chance stayed by Jenna's side. One morning, as she laced up her boots, a young private walked into the tent. You got mail, he said. She looked up. He handed her a thick envelope. No return address. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Official header. Final line cleared in black bold letters. Case closed. K9 Axel, now registered as Chance, is permanently released to sea. Jenna Bell, non-active duty, for private care and therapeutic purpose. Jenna sat down hard on the cot, paper in her lap, hands shaking. Chance walked over and rested his head on her leg. She smiled through tears. You're home, she whispered. A month later, the second PAW program launched officially. 2 dogs joined, then 4, then 10. Handlers came, some silent, some angry, some broken in places no one could see. Chance met every one of them at the door. No barking, just presence, just quiet understanding. He wasn't just a dog anymore. He was the reason someone else believed again. He was the proof that healing is real. Some said he was dangerous. Some said he was lost. But all he ever needed was someone who didn't look away. Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.